Spy Cops Info Podcast, a series on the undercover political police who spied on over 1,000 campaign groups since 1968. Hashtag SpyCopsPod. Episode 23, Jason Kirkpatrick and the German court case. Yeah, welcome to Spy Cops Info Podcast. This week we're very pleased to be speaking to Jason, who's based in Berlin. So Jason, can you introduce yourself generally, but also what's your connection with this whole Spy Cops scandal?
Sure. My name is Jason Kirkpatrick, and I'm a climate activist doing a lot of communications work, meaning I write press releases, I write articles, things like that. And I've been doing that kind of work as an activist for over 30 years and professionally as well. So that's my job right now. I'm as an individual, I'm doing global communications for a big international climate NGO that's called 350.org. But I'm speaking today for myself personally, definitely not for the organization, just for me. And a little bit more background is that I've been living in Berlin, Germany for around 19 years. Before that, I did little bits of work in Prague, in the southwest of Germany, and I spent two or 3 years in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and a bit of time in Derry, right after the ceasefires and the Belfast Peace Agreement, working in more working class areas and trying to bring folks together around issues of sustainable development. And before that, I was an activist and a city councilor, and then a vice mayor in Arcata, California, which
Oh, man.
at the time it was called the
Okay.
green capital of the USA. So I have a very kind of diverse background.
Oh, right, very interesting. Thanks for all that. So obviously, so you say for the last 19 years you've been based in Berlin. So that means we're going to talk about the undercover police officer Mark Kennedy, and so obviously those 19 years that would include, because I think his deployment started in 2003 and finished in 2010. I think I'm right in saying. So for all that time, you would have been based in Berlin. So how did you meet him then, Jason?
Yeah, that's right. I met him in 2005. And at the time, some people might remember or might know by now that a big protest, or the biggest protest that year, was in summer in Scotland around the G8 summit hosted by Tony Blair at the time. And there were a couple of key issues. A lot of people might remember the Make Poverty History campaign with Bono, the singer of U2, and a lot of others saying, hey, we need to really get rid of this third world debt or debt from the global south so that people can have a fighting chance to
Mm-hmm.
survive. That was a really big campaign. There was a march with 100,000 people in Edinburgh. And another big theme there at the G8 was climate. And people, it's not just in the last few years, but a long time, people have been saying that the climate is a serious problem that affects the whole planet. And many of us, including myself, were active at that time doing communications around this. So I was doing the same kind of thing. I was writing press releases every day of the G8 summit. And before that, I met Mark Kennedy on an info tour. So there was a group around the UK
Mm-hmm.
with a bunch of folks that had organized lectures all around England and so on. And sometimes I guess they'd gotten to know Mark
Uh-huh.
Kennedy.
That was the Trapeze Roadshow, was it?
That's right. That's right. And so I had a contact, a friend that was active with that group. And they got in touch with me and said, hey, Jason, you've been working a bit in Ireland and Northern Ireland, especially. And we're going to do an info tour and a little lecture and tell people about the coming G8 summit. And they were themes that I was working on or interested in around the climate, of course, poverty in the global south, and debt. And my friend said, well, we've got this mate of ours in England, and his name is Mark, and he's got a truck that can drive us around, and he's offered to pay for it, and he's paying for the
Mm-hmm.
petrol. He's going to drive us through the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland. Hey, can you help us, by the way, with your contacts in Belfast and organize some
Mm-hmm.
lectures, which I'd done at a place called the City Church, which is a Central Belfast church. Anyways, that's how I met him first.
Right. So
Uh,
actually, okay, and so you met up with them actually in Ireland, did you?
I met him in
In
Dublin.
Dublin.
That's right. I met him in Dublin.
Okay.
Was introduced to him. Friendly enough guy, as all
Yeah.
these spy cops, as they're called, the spy cops. They're all friendly, right? Or else they wouldn't be spy cops. I mean,
Yeah.
they're
I mean,
trained.
I think I think they tailored their personality to who they were speaking to often. So I think they had, if you like, multiple personalities in some ways, as other people have noted. I mean, yeah. So the international aspect of this is probably, if you like, a new theme for this for the podcast. And just to give a bit of context, we know from the early days of the the first undercover unit, the Special Demonstration Squad, undercovers did go abroad. They went on, like, there's a few sort of Marxist Trotskyist conferences in Europe. But as far as we know, Mark Kennedy's travels outside of the legal jurisdiction of England and Wales are definitely the most extensive by far. I mean, perhaps we'll find out about another one we don't know yet. He's done even more travelling, but as far as we know, so you mentioned Ireland, and also that you knew him in Germany where you were living at the time as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And what we'll get to soon is, and the reason I'm here today, I think especially, is my court case that I've got in Germany this month. Yes, January. Yeah,
Just to mention, because all the places that Kennedy travelled to during his deployment, I've got Italy, France, Spain, as you mentioned, Ireland, both sides of the border, Denmark, Poland, Scotland, and also the US, which I hope we might speak to you about that a little bit at the end as well. But yeah, so you've brought a court case in Germany regarding Mark Kennedy's activities in Germany. Is that right? Can you explain? Tell us more.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, personally, I traveled with Mark, and was with Mark, and often in his truck, with him driving me around in the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland. Met him in Scotland. I stayed at his home in England. He was in Germany, stayed at my home. And I was in Poland with him as well. Of course, yes, he was in Denmark for the Climate Summit 2009. He was in Iceland, actively helping and driving around people. So, I mean, his case has been discussed in parliaments, not only the
Mhm.
London City Parliament and the National Parliament, but the Icelandic Parliament. I mean, his problematic, his scandal, that all this trouble he's created has been discussed at minister level in Iceland, in the Republic of Ireland, in Germany. In Germany, I've met with members of parliament multiple times, and the German policing minister or interior minister has written to England
Uh-huh.
asking to have Germany involved in the undercover policing inquiry going on in London.
Yeah.
This has been really high level stuff, and I've been fighting 11 years, like many of us have been fighting since the outing of Kennedy, to get to the bottom of the undercover scandal. And for a lot of us, that means getting our own police files. So in Germany, I'm leaving out here Northern Ireland, where I've also got a case going on, but Scotland, all these places, I've been fighting 11 years in Germany to get my police file, and I've got little bits of
Yeah.
it. That's been interesting along the way.
Yeah, just to recap for people who aren't so familiar with the whole Spy Cops scandal, the official state inquiry in England is restricted to considering matters that happened within England and Wales legal jurisdiction, which is a nonsense in many ways, especially when it most obviously a nonsense when it comes to Scotland and the north of Ireland. But when you reach Kennedy's deployment in the undercover policing inquiry, which won't be for like probably 3 years yet or something. We'll see if we do get to see any of that international evidence or not. But yeah, so you say you brought this court case in Germany. Could you? I mean, obviously, most people listening won't be too familiar with the German court system. What kind of court is it, and what kind of case is it, Jason?
Yeah, so another thing that's quite difficult about this kind of 11 years of fighting this is that, because Kennedy actually, he met loads of people outside the UK or even outside England. And as you mentioned, that undercover policing inquiry going on in London, it only covers England and Wales. So I have a German case going on. I'm also a core participant or something, kind of like a state
Hmm.
witness, if you will, in London. And when I applied to be there, the judge told me directly he doesn't want to hear about Germany, he doesn't want to hear about anywhere else, or he said it has to be relative to England. So I think the fact that also
Hmm.
I had visited Kennedy and stayed at his home in Nottingham,
Yeah.
that's what kind of got me in to be a core participant in London. And even though I spent much, much more time with Kennedy abroad, but that was kind of thrown out. So I just want to clarify, when you say you wonder if this stuff will be allowed as evidence, what we've heard so far is that nothing outside of England and Wales should be allowed in.
Yeah, I mean, so in the evidence that we've heard so far, there have been reports which are based outside England and Wales. So, I mentioned, I think there was a trip to this Red Europe conference, I think, in the very early days, in the early 70s, and that is mentioned, and the officers did give evidence of them being outside England and Wales. So, I think, as far as I can see, is that we might hear evidence about stuff that went outside those areas, but it probably, I don't know how they'll do it. I guess they'll exclude it from the final report. Whenever that's actually happens in like 5 or 6, 7 years time, or God knows. But, it, but it's really interesting what you're saying, because it just shows how ridiculous it is to have this. It's basically a completely, if if the undercover cops can travel across these borders to cut off the evidence at them, as what at them is just, it just makes it ridiculous, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, so let me answer your question about what's going on
Oh
in
yeah.
Germany, and getting to the end of this 11-year story. After 11 years, it's finally coming to court. As of this interview, it's coming up in a couple of
Hmm.
weeks, and it's going to be big no matter what the verdict is. But a lot of people don't know that these British undercover cops that went abroad apparently only did so with a contract, a written formal
Right.
contract. And that's what Kennedy had. After years and years of, kind of lobbying, like activist lobbying, meaning going to parliament and just talking to members of parliament saying, what are you going to do about this British cop targeting
Hmm.
people here? Finally, after lots of questions and answers, and in Germany in the parliament, they're called small questions, or you can ask the government parliamentary questions to get an answer. And they admitted that they had contracts with Kennedy and that this is standard practice. After many of these questions, it came out that actually across Europe, all members of the European Union have been meeting on an annual basis for, I believe it's something like 2 decades, and coordinating at times informally with no publicly released notes how they're going to share and exchange undercover police. And it was explained in the parliament that Mark Kennedy, not only he had an agreement, but the German police had a formal agreement with his department, which was the
Yeah.
MPOIU, if you can say it, National Public Order Intelligence
So
Unit, right?
really hard to
Yeah.
interrupt.
So that's the way it's been going for decades, and it kind of came out that this is a big advantage, and they do it all the time to send cops across borders because it's easier to, in a very slimy way, sneak into these activist groups. And what I'm talking about here are open public meetings that were not hidden. They were, advertised with big
Oh yeah,
posters
yeah.
on the internet with websites. Come to our open public meeting. These are the kind of meetings I went to. These are the kind of meetings Mark Kennedy came to. And the police admit that it's easier to get foreigners to come and spy. So, for example, here in Germany, if a new person would join in my group, and I'm in a part of Berlin, and we might just ask the new person, hi, nice to meet you, where are you from? They might say, oh, I'm from Berlin, or I'm from Hamburg. And then we might say, oh, I have a friend in Hamburg, did you do
Yeah,
this
yeah.
kind of stuff there? And people kind of get to know each other. Just how it works. And the cops found out, and they have said this publicly now, better to get, in this case, someone like Mark Kennedy to come. And then obviously, if he comes to a meeting and they say, oh, where are you from? Nottingham. Nobody in Germany probably knows someone in Nottingham, so they can't really check him out.
Hmm.
And the cops know this and they do this. So if anyone in England didn't know until this podcast that your country, your government is sending undercover cops all over, then they're probably actually still doing it. And
bilateral, because we know at the G8, the one in Scotland, there was, I think, 6 undercover German police there, presumably on a much shorter deployment. It would, presumably, we don't know exactly. They would have just been there for the actual few days of the summit, and also, and we assume you could obviously, you could pretty much guarantee if Germany had 6 cops there, then there would be undercovers from other European countries as well. You would have thought. So this is a pan-European thing. We're not. I'm not saying that. We're not saying, because we don't know, that other countries operate a similar system of long-term deployment. So we simply don't know that. So
well, we know it now. I mean, in England it hasn't been reported, but in Germany we also had these more parliamentary questions, and it came out that this is a regular practice. That other G8 summits, there have been a dozen people. In German G8 summits, there have been 10 or a dozen foreign undercover cops here. It's kind of regulated. They have contracts. This is known. I think it doesn't get in the British press a lot, and I suspect that's a little bit because of it's an island, and also with Brexit, maybe people are looking inward. But this is known.
I mean, yeah, because obviously the political setup in Germany is different because it's a federal system. So, are these undercovers in Germany? Are they run on a sort of federal level? Or are they local to the? Are they devolved? Bavaria.
Yes, they're devolved. In Germany, there are 16 regions
Uh,
or states. In German, it's called Länder. And so actually, I've taken to court they're called LKA of the region where Mark Kennedy
right.
was for the G8 summit. That region is called
Hmm.
Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Um, or Mecklenburg Pomerania, I think it is in English. And so I'm taking the police to court, the
I
police
see.
that had a contract with him. And basically, the court case, what it's about to, in a nutshell, to make it simple, is to say, was Mark Kennedy spying on me illegal or not? And so my goal is that a judge or maybe a few judges are going to hear my case. The date is the 28th of January, 2022. And then they will decide or rule. I'm not sure if it's right away or possibly within a couple of months, but they
Okay.
will rule if Kennedy's spying was either illegal or legal according to the German
Okay.
Constitution. So basically, whether it's unconstitutional spying or constitutional. And the way I see it, this has very big legal
Hmm.
ramifications, and it sets a precedent. And I think it sends a big message to that undercover policing inquiry based in London that they have to take this seriously. If other nations are deciding that British spying on foreign soil, in this case Germany, if it's unconstitutional, then the Judge Midding, he has to take this that much more seriously there in London.
Well, yeah, it just gives more context. It's another thing to bash them over the head with, to get them to pay attention, and also, I guess the international angle is kind of interesting from a media point of view as well. Yeah. So, in terms of, I don't know how technical you've got into the legal system. What would make it unconstitutional? His his being in Germany, his being an undercover cop in Germany.
Right. Well, I'm learning this, and as you can imagine, so as I told the
Sure, sure.
listeners, and I'm an American basically. I was born in the States. I grew up there.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was very active in the political system. Then I moved to Northern Ireland. When I was there, I spent a lot of time in the South of the Republic. So a little bit slowly, I learned about legal systems in the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland. Then I've been involved in this inquiry. I'm trying to learn about English law, and now I'm trying to learn about German law. And to do that in the German language, I tell you, was not easy.
I bet, yeah. There's a lot of very long words in German.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh. So my lawyer just sent me a letter actually today, and thank goodness she speaks very good English. So she sends me a letter explaining briefly what it means. Then I read the technical German, but I can't understand it all. So I go to DeepL and do an automatic translation,
Okay.
which is usually good except for all this legal stuff. And
Yeah.
she says, "Is this okay? Like, how am I supposed to tell the lawyer what's okay and not?" But I do my best. And so to answer your question, the technicalities are basically in my case, as I mentioned, I've been going to open meetings, I've been writing press releases, I've been writing
Mhm.
articles, and so I wasn't doing anything illegal. Like that's
Okay.
not illegal. It's not illegal to protest for climate. Like we can talk also maybe another time what's going on in England now with the policing bill, and this big kill the bill topic is very big in the UK, I think, as we're talking right now. So
Big demos everywhere tomorrow.
yeah, so that's definitely an issue. There is the British government and Boris Johnson tried to legalize all the kind of spying and stuff
Well,
that
yeah.
Mark Kennedy was doing, but so in my case, what I was doing is not illegal, and not only that, but the key thing here is that there was no ongoing
Mhm.
investigation of me. So I've got a number of police files, and nowhere in there does it say that Jason ever did anything illegal. Jason, me, I was not suspected of doing anything illegal. I wasn't being followed to watch to see if I was doing anything illegal. And in fact, I've gotten to see some of my police files, and they say that Jason is known not to be a frontline activist. That's a quote. Not to be a frontline activist. He's seen more as a media face. And that is
Mhm.
a quote from my police files. In other places, it talks about that I do media work. There's some other things that are looking like they might be illegal also in Germany. For example, in Germany, it's not legal to have someone's private data, and you might know around
GDPR,
Europe,
yeah.
there's this GDPR that people have the right to privacy and their own data, especially around health. I had health problems with skin cancer at the time, and there are
Right.
comments about that in my police file. So there are a number of reasons actually that it looks like this spying was not legal.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that about the GDPR. I was speaking to a lawyer over here who specialises in suing the police, and she says like the data protection breaches is definitely a could be a major avenue in now in the future to hold the police to account. But going back to the German stuff, have you seen any documents from the German side from your case? Have you had any disclosure?
Yes, I had, and starting in 2012. So I mentioned this is going back 11 years for me, and right when this came out, even a German member of parliament made statements that were in the British press and the Guardian. For example, a member of parliament said that he wants to get to the bottom of this, and as far as he can tell, it looks like there could be illegality. So it's been a big topic here. Specifically, 2012. Sorry, I lost my place. I get so steamed up. So I got this police file, and I had a very good lawyer, actually, a very good human rights lawyer from a big firm, and he wrote to these German police. And Germany has a few different police agencies. One's called the Police for Protecting the Constitution. It's a funny name, and they're funny police. And anyways, they sent something back after very much back and forth. First, they didn't want to give us anything, and then after more legal letters, they said, "Okay, we're not going to give you Jason's file, but we're going to synopsize it for you and give you a few bullet points." So I got something like, I think it was an 11-page letter with around 20 bullet points. And every one of these things listed legal things. They said, "We know that Jason Kirkpatrick was a vice mayor, a deputy mayor from California." Like, oh, great. Why is that in my police file? Jason gave an interview with Greenpeace magazine. Jason gave an interview with German Der Spiegel magazine about spy Mark Kennedy. Jason Kirkpatrick gave a lecture about the spy Mark Kennedy. There's nothing illegal. So I wonder, what are they doing here?
I mean, going back to the whole legality, being legal behaviour and doing anything illegal. I mean, having now gone through with my colleagues all the files that have been released from tranche one of the undercover policing inquiry, I say 99% of those files, the reports, the special branch reports, they don't record criminal behaviour. They record the sort of weekly meetings of a variety of groups.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things in my police files, it says that I wrote an article about state repression against G8 activists. So actually, I think this is what gets revealed in my court case here in Germany, that I was doing
Mhm.
communications work. I was very public. I was vocal. It says that in my police files. Jason is known um, as an intelligent person who speaks well on these issues, and he's seen as a media face. That's who they want to stop. They want to stop people who are not afraid to speak out and who are actually making them look bad. That gets really clear. And a personal story, I think I've never told this to anybody before, but one time Mark Kennedy came to Berlin, and he called me, and I think I knew him for around 5 years. I met him in 2005, and if I remember right, the last email or text we had was around 2010. And one of the last times he came to Berlin, he said, Jason, I'm in Berlin and the police are following me and I'm afraid. I was thinking, oh, my friend Mark, at the time, my friend Mark, what's he done? He hasn't done anything wrong. And I got really pissed off and I felt sorry for him. And I felt like, oh, he's in a bad way. He sounded paranoid and terrified. And I find out now, looking back with what we know, he's probably faking something, right? To entrap me, or I don't know what he's trying to do. So he called me and he sounded panicking. He says, Jason, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. These cops are following me. I can't lose them. I'm like, you've done nothing wrong. Tell me, Mark, tell me where they are, and I'll come down, I'll get in their face, and I'll tell them to fuck off in English. I'm going to tell them to get lost. Sorry, I don't know if you can say the F word or not on a
Well,
podcast.
I mean, it's to gain your confidence, isn't it? Saying, I mean,
So I think he was, anyways. And anyways, I thought, there's nothing that my friend has done wrong that deserves this. Now, looking back, I think he was trying to scare me or see if I had something to be scared about. Who knows? But
I think at the first climate camp the first climate camp in Yorkshire, he said it when he got arrested. He said he got beaten up by the police. It just adds to the kudos. You're being followed, you're being stopped, being arrested, beaten up. Just one of those things. Is like obviously that's the sort of thing you'd hear from a genuine activist. So it's just one of those. It's just a bit of tradecraft, really. Just further trying to inveigle his way into your confidence, I guess.
yeah, the other thing that I would like to make very clear also about Mark Kennedy is this topic of him being an agent provocateur, because I've heard this a few times. And in
Mm-hmm.
my case specifically, I remember one time we were in Berlin. We were going out to the pub and coming home late at night. And as I mentioned, I've done communications things around climate, G8 protest. And of course, like most
Yeah,
normal people, I don't like Nazis or neo Nazis, but I'm not
sure.
active. I'm not an active anti-fascist campaigner, but Mark Kennedy asked me out of the blue one time. He said, "Hey, Jason, do you know any bad neo-Nazis?" Because, as he explained it, he had a crew in England, and he could come over to Germany, and if I could name and point out a bad neo-Nazi that needed sorting out, that's I remember him saying that he had a crew, and we could come over and sort them out. So if I would propose a name, he would come over and sort them out with me. And this for me is clearly a kind of agent provocateur thing. Like I had never brought up doing anything like that, knowing anything about that. I was not involved in any group like that, and I'd known him fairly well, I thought, for 4 years. So for him to come out and propose that, that was one time, I have to be honest, where I'm like, what's going on with this guy? This is a bit odd.
There's several things off with that. The idea of like bringing anti-fascists over from the UK to Germany, where there's quite a lot of anti-fascists. It just seems a bit weird, doesn't it? And there's a few things. Yeah, I mean, he definitely. I mean, most of the undercovers, as well, we mentioned before on the Spy Cops podcast, didn't really indulge in that kind of Asian provocateur stuff. But Kennedy was one of the handful that did that we know of. So that's with it, yeah, in character, but also in character with him building himself up as this militant anti-fascist guy as well as part of his persona. So yeah,
Right. As you mentioned before, this tactic of mirroring, I think that's what it's called. Like Kennedy, was good at mirroring, and this is something people ask me a lot because I do a lot of public speeches, and they say, "Well, what can we do to spot undercover cops?" And well, that's one thing, and I think a lot of us have gotten to see that after we've compared kind of notebooks after all these cops have come out. Like, what can you look for? And we learned this tactic in the case of Mark Kennedy. When he came to Germany, he would often wear a St. Pauli T-shirt. It's a German football club, a soccer football club that is
yeah, yeah.
anti-fascist. They've been anti-racist for a long time, and he would tell everyone that he likes St. Pauli, and that goes over quite well in Germany with people who don't like neo-Nazis, which is probably 99% of society. And in England, he might have been telling people something else. I'm not sure what he
Yeah,
said.
didn't he? Because he came over, didn't he get a very extensive and tattoo when he was in Berlin as well? Do you know about that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember he got it, and then we went to a tattoo fest. It was during the timing of a tattoo convention, and we went out for drinks at the party after the tattoo convention. That was kind of a funny story. That they said, "Do
Right.
you guys have tickets?" And Mark just showed his tattoo and said, "Is that ticket good enough for you?" And they're like, "Right, mate, come on in." And we got right in. So, you know, I can imagine on a human level, this guy, as we know, he had a family, and from what they have said in the
Mhm.
press a long time ago, they didn't feel like they were fairly treated, and Mark seemed to be enjoying his life, getting tattoos and going to parties somewhere else.
Well,
So,
so it seems, yeah. Basically, is there anything else you want to say about Kennedy in Germany or your interactions with him there or anywhere else?
well, I'll just tell you, it's a big deal. I was on the phone
Uh-huh.
with TV and press today and this week, and it's a big deal when you get big newspapers saying, "Can I have that as an exclusive? Can you hold that exclusive to me for just 2 days?" So that's the state it's in right here. And Germany's national TV, it's called ARD or ZDF. It's kind of like BBC One or BBC Two. So a ZDF film team is coming, a three-person film crew to the court
Okay,
case.
great.
They're doing interviews, they're doing whatever shooting they can around there. They're making a documentary about this case. And so far, it's planned to be one third about this case with my court case and Mark Kennedy, and another third about another German undercover cop who was outed also in 2011. His name was
Oh,
Simon
yeah, I
Brummer.
remember that.
He
Yeah.
was, yeah, he was spying on people in 2011 was the same time frame that it came out. And then in Hamburg, Germany, there are a few cases actually that came out a few years ago where activists also uncovered, I think it was three undercover cops. And one thing that's quite scandalous here is one of these women undercover cops apparently had an intimate
Oh,
relationship with an activist, and which is absolutely no go. And when it came out about Kennedy, and he admitted himself that he had multiple relations.
mhm.
He talked about it in the British Parliament when they had him come testify. He admitted it, and in the German Parliament in that year, 2011, some members of Parliament asked the head of the police, his name is Jörg Zierke, and they said, "Is that allowed? This kind of sexual relations here?" And he said, "Absolutely not." He said something like this: "Gate garnish, it's a no go," or "Absolutely not." And that's a big deal. So when it came out in 2016, 17, or 18 that a German cop did that, that was quite bad. So this topic is, oh, they're always asking me about it. That I don't talk about it that much because that wasn't the case for me
Of
personally
course. No,
here.
yeah, yeah.
But it's been in the German press since 2011 that Kennedy was here. He had intimate relations. It's been said openly that Kennedy had relations with women in
Right.
Germany. That's been said a lot, and it's a big issue. So I think it's really important that this case is happening at the end of January, and then we'll see what
Yeah.
happens with the
I mean, it's
verdict.
really great that you've persevered with it because I guess, I mean, I know you've got your lawyers, but I guess it's been a bit more of a struggle to do it over there in Germany when I feel like most people involved in the Spy Cup scandal are based in the UK. So yeah, well done for carrying on the battle there.
Thank you, thank you. Luckily I have been in touch or on email lists, what have you, with friends, colleagues there in the UK, and it's been nice to even by email feel like I'm part of a community. So it is a bit tough here on my own, but I'm lucky that I have been active here. I do have a number of friends that support me. Also with this press work this week, a few people are helping out. Kennedy did meet a number of people here
Hmm.
over the years that he came, and a lot of them haven't forgotten what he's done.
Yeah,
And luckily, they've stuck by and helped me out a bit, and I'm really thankful for all that support.
things you flagged up. You might Kennedy being in the US. Is that right, Jason?
Right, right. We know a little bit about that, and a little bit has been in the press. He said himself that he worked for the FBI. I think this was during his testimony in the British Parliament. He spoke at the Home Affairs Select Committee. And also, when his passport was found, his real passport, he had a USA work permit. And if I remember right, it was valid for 1 or 2 more years when it was found. And you don't get a USA work permit very easily. So, actually, in the parliament, he said that he was working for the FBI and that he had helped the LA County Sheriff in Los Angeles. And he said he'd worked with a group called the Densist
Time
Group.
ago now, because I remember there was a claim, I think by him, that he was working for a private firm, but then, yeah, yeah, was it somewhere in the Midwest he was based or something like that? Or I can't really, yeah, I can't recall now.
As of a few years ago, they had offices in Texas and California, Beverly Hills.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was the Texas one. I was thinking. Obviously, that's not the Midwest at all. But yeah. So that's because we know that he went to a meeting, didn't he? Whilst he was still a police officer in New York, and met up with I think, some French activists
Yeah, a
who.
number of people. And there's also an American that mentioned being targeted by Kennedy there. His name is Harry Halpin, and he's also a core participant. Yeah, well, he's an American who's been working around different parts of Europe, and
Well,
it's a big case called the Tarnac case in France. People can look it up because it's also fascinating. It's called Tarnac, Tarnac, and that was a community where there were a bunch of people trying to building an alternative
mhm.
community or kind of like commune or more community. And Kennedy had infiltrated, and then people got arrested, and some of them went to jail for a while. I don't know how long. They were found innocent in 2018, after being charged for, like, extremist or terrorist charges, facing them for, I think it was also 9 years from 2009 to 2018. They had these serious charges, and then the court, like, basically threw it out and said that they're innocent. So,
And I think one of the reasons wasn't there a bunch of evidence that came from Kennedy or from the MPIOU, and then I can't recall exactly. They didn't want to disclose the evidence, or it was ruled invalid in some way. Yeah.
yes, it's very controversial, and there's a very good report I was looking at today from State Watch. So if you search on the internet for State Watch, Mark Kennedy, and Tarnac, Tarnac, you'll find it. And the British police didn't want Kennedy's name coming out, but it did. And because,
Oh, yeah.
it's one scandal after the next with that guy, Mark Kennedy. And so it's like gets heaped on and heaped on and heaped on. I mean, he lied in the British Parliament when they asked him how many relationships he had. He lied about that number. We all know that. Everybody who knows anything about this case knows that that's a lie. And then in the Tarnac case, his evidence didn't stack up, so these people were charged with extremist crimes for years. Then they were, it took, I think, 9 years of
Yeah,
them
yeah.
fighting also. And let me just make this clear: people aren't making money out of this. I'm working 11 years here, and I'm not getting money. The reason I like to do it is because I feel like I'm winning. And when I get this our side of the story in the press, telling the truth about what the state does to people, the kind of people, and I think it should be said again, right? What are the kinds of activists that these police have been targeting? Women's groups in the early 70s, going to meetings where people are trying to get kids' school lunches paid for. That's what's come out in the British undercover policing inquiry. Or in 1968, people who wanted to stop the Vietnam War, a wildly unsuccessful war. Women who want equal rights and food for their kids. We've heard about the gay rights movement being targeted. Any kind of cause for any kind of justice. Climate, 20 or 30 years ago, people would say, we're not sure there's climate problems. But now nobody denies there's climate change, including Boris Johnson, yet they send their undercover police to neutralize these groups any way they can.
I mean, that's right. I mean, if you like, one of the many things you draw from all the state surveillance that's happened over the last 50 years plus is that the surveillance was directed at groups who wanted to change the status quo in some way. I mean, yeah, in a variety of ways, and to various levels of success. But I mean, it wasn't against crime. It wasn't against extremism, or however you want to define it. It was simply people wanting to make a difference. Um,
Yeah, let's talk about the motivation. So sometimes people ask me this too, especially folks that maybe aren't so familiar with the topic are like, well, why would the police be doing that? Why would they send people to target climate groups? And well, it's kind of common knowledge that there's a rotating door between the energy industry or the fossil fuel industry and government, right?
mhm,
So you get these big energy companies that are talking about getting billions of pounds of subsidies to build a new energy plant, and then maybe some climate activists in the years 2008 or 9, they might want to go and make a protest at your coal energy
mhm.
factory. and it, might give you a bad reputation. So what has happened? These company executives or their lobbyists have gone to government and said, these nice environmentalists are making us look bad. Can you please put some in prison or get rid of their groups, or else we're not going to build in a new energy plant. And the politicians, they want the votes, they want the donations. So what do? They send their cops. So it's taxpayer money on the one hand subsidizing these fossil fuel companies. Like I know because it's part of my work that last year $5.9 trillion US dollars were
Mhm.
spent to subsidize the fossil fuel industry. So these companies are getting money hand over foot, like handouts from taxpayers.
Oh yeah,
They get subsidies, they get all their roads built. The government sometimes pay for the power lines, like the same in England with the train scandal. Like what's profitable running the trains and what's not is maintaining the tracks.
oh
So
yeah,
that the taxpayer and the British government take over the responsibility for maintaining the train
yeah, yeah.
tracks, and then the profitable part gets sold off to whoever, Virgin or I don't know, whoever
Yeah,
else.
somebody
So
now, yeah. Okay,
where's the money?
great. Yeah, thanks for that. So the other, if you like, thing, the other arm of the whole Spy Cop scandal you were involved with was actually a judicial review based in the north of Ireland, which challenged the limitations of the inquiry, as I understand it, to England and Wales, and it was a challenge basically to extend it to the north of Ireland. I don't know if you want to speak about that at all, Jason.
Sure. And this is also a story in itself. It's another thing people can look up a lot in the papers. And thank goodness Amnesty International Northern Ireland has been backing me on this since kind of the beginning.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, in my case, I met Mark Kennedy, as I mentioned, in Dublin. We were in his truck. He drove along with these other good activist folks, and myself. He drove us around the Republic and across the border into Northern Ireland. So Mark Kennedy, with his money or government money, drove me to Northern Ireland. That's where that starts. When I was named then as a excuse me, a core participant in the London-based undercover policing inquiry, which covers England and Wales, but not Northern Ireland, then it kind of didn't make sense.
Hmm.
Like the judge told me I can talk about what happened in England and Wales, but I couldn't talk about Northern Ireland. It makes no sense when Mark and Lee drove me across the border there, all this stuff. So
No.
I found another human rights lawyer, and he started to raise a stink, and we filed some legal papers, and then I had a judicial review, and I cleared the first round in 2018. I think was my victory there. Then we've had a couple of things. First, the government fell apart, and they didn't know what to do in Northern Ireland. Politically, it was a bit tough, and then Corona on top of that. So that the court stuff has been put on hold since 2018. Also, unfortunately, I've run out of money, so we haven't been able to drive up enough money for the lawyer. So
Right.
if anybody's listening to this and they want to kick down some money to pay a lawyer to bring forward that judicial review in Northern Ireland, please get in touch with me or this podcast and let us know how you can help, because we'd really like to bring that forward, and a bit of money will help.
Yeah, yeah. Because we just to give a bit of context, we know that quite early days there were one or two undercovers who went over to the north of Ireland around 1968, 1969, the birth of the civil rights movement there. So obviously there was clearly undercovers there, at least at that point. And there was also there was a bunch of undercovers who infiltrated various Irish civil rights groups, I guess you called them, like the Anti-Internment League and the Troops Out movement. Plenty of sort of like Irish related infiltrations going on. So yeah.
Definitely, I mean, it's been said that it's a Pandora's box over there in Northern Ireland, and it came out through the police files that were released, I think, a year ago at the undercover policing inquiry,
Mm.
that these undercover police from Mark Kennedy's unit, which had a different name, as many people know, earlier, called the STS, the Special Demonstration Squad, they had been targeting Northern Irish groups, sometimes the London chapters, like the Northern Irish Civil
Yeah.
Rights Association, and they are the ones that organized the Bloody Sunday March.
Mm.
And some key Northern Irish organizers, Eamon McCann and
Mhm.
Bernadette Devlin at the time, McAllinsky, I think she's called now,
Yeah.
they were targeted also when they gave lectures. And Northern Ireland definitely has to be included somehow in this inquiry, and that's what my court case in Northern Ireland's about. That's been reported in the Times. the Times Ireland, all over the place, Belfast Telegraph, BBC. So have a look, search again, or Mark Kennedy or Undercover Police and Northern Ireland, and what a Pandora's box this case is. And one of the things that came out of these German parliamentary questions also, when they were asking how was Mark Kennedy's spying abroad, meaning in Germany, how was that regulated? And it came out that there was this group, an international working group on exchange of undercover police. And then there was another question, well, who is in that grouping? And they said it's members of the EU plus other informal ad hoc other nation states as needed on a one-off basis. And they said USA was at these meetings, Israel, Ukraine. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's in that State Watch report now. It reminds me that I
yeah,
read it many years ago. Yeah.
State Watch,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's definitely, yeah, well, we'll put the links on the podcast. We'll put all these links on so people can find out more for sure. Anything else you want to add?
With all of this work and all this scandal and all that going on, I just want to mention that for me, in a way, this is really inspiring, because if you're targeted by an undercover cop, it means you're doing something right. And I find that in a way as really a nice confirmation in a way that I'm doing something effective. So somehow, if I'm talking about the climate and in my case, I feel like I'm doing a good job, then it's like, oh, well, this guy was targeting me because I'm doing a good job. And I just want to say also, I've been so thankful for all the people that I've met through this struggle. So other people fighting on the front lines of these battles in the court or wherever. I've met people like Helen Steele and Kate Wilson, who I find incredibly inspiring. A number of folks, people doing these cops blogs, the campaign opposing police surveillance, the URG, the Undercover Research Group, is doing fantastic work. I've, I've got to meet these people over the years, a lot of them, and you now, Chris, for the first time, and they're really nice folks, and I count them among my friends, my dear and trusted friends. And on occasion, we have holidays together, or we meet up and we go out wherever, to the pub or wherever. And there are people I really like, and in a way, I feel like this has been a bit of an 11-year struggle. And these are kind of really solid friends for life. And I'm very thankful for that. So I'm not happy about having to spend time dealing with lawyers and so on. But the rest of it, there is definitely a benefit for me. And I was traveling just last month and staying with a couple of people that have been working on these things too. And these are really solid folks. And I'm really, really grateful, and I'm really, really thankful for that. I just want to put that out there as well.
Oh, that's great. It's good to hear, isn't there? There's a positive side of these things as well. So, yeah, great. Thanks so much for that, Jason.
To find out more about this topic, visit spycops.info. Follow us on social media @spycopsinfo. And please give us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts.